Is anyone here addicted to the knife?
This one!
Well, then I ain't gonna keep you waiting much longer. Ladies and gentlemen, some of your cast from Repo, the genetic opera star and creator, Terrence Zadunich. Hey, Robin. Come on, baby, get in here. And Mr. Bill fucking Mosley. Okay, so let's talk about unrelated shit. Terrence.
I'm the smartest and the toughest.
Terrence, since this whole thing is really a lot of your hard work and insanity and vision.
My DNA.
Yeah, your DNA, and believe me, I've seen his DNA, it's kind of freaking weird. But tell us where Repo actually came. What was the genesis for Repo?
Yeah, you start with the hardest question, right? Where does creativity come from?
Okay, favorite color?
You know, I get asked this question a lot, and there's, at Repo, since it started as a stage play, it traversed many years and it grew and different ideas came in along the way. But if I'm really honest with myself, I think the answer to the question is very simple. It's a love of rock and roll, a love of the macabre, and a love of hot chicks. You put them all in a stew and you stir it around and you get Repo.
Now, when you first envisioned it was a stage play, right? How long was it a stage play before it got to the point where it was, tell us about how you met Darren and how the movie actually came to fruition?
Well, the whole journey was about 8.5 years. So it started out actually as a two-man, almost like a cabaret act that Darren Smith, Repo's co-creator, and I did at rock clubs. And we did that for about a year before actually becoming, I guess, officially a stage play, bringing in more actors, expanding the world, expanding the story, expanding the musicians. And when we did it for the very first time as an official stage show, we had a theater at our control, we had choreography, we also had a director for the first time. And that director ended up being Darren Bowsman. And this is before he had directed Saw or anything else. So he came in, he was pretty much fresh off the bus from Kansas. And he said, he told us, you know, basically what we wanted to hear, which was, I love horror movies, and I love rock operas. And I came to Hollywood to try to make a rock opera film. And, you know, on the one hand, when you're interviewing people for a job, they'll tell you what you want to hear, even if it's not true. You know, like, you're the best I've ever had. But in Darren's case, you could tell he really believed it. Yeah, we believed it. He was just like, he meant it. We went to his house, we saw that he had things like Tommy and Jesus Christ Superstar on rotation. And so it really was, I think, a match made in hell. And then it continued on as a stage play, and Bowsman said, you know, if I'm ever in a position where I can turn Repo into a movie, I will. And 8.5 years later, it happened.
Thank God for that, huh? It was a long road bringing that puppy to the screen now. Ogre and Bill, do you want to talk now or do you want to finish eating grapes? Should I continue with Terrence for a little bit?
John, you know, whatever you want to do. You're the moderator.
Can you pass the grapes down here? No, I'm only kidding. How did you guys get involved with the project? Well, first of all, how many Cornbugs fans are there here?
Cornbugs.
And the people who aren't shouting and raising their hands, you guys are missing out.
And check out Spider Mountain, too.
Yeah.
Spider Mountain is really good.
Bill's actually a talented musician. So it was kind of a no-brainer.
Well, it's funny, actually, you mentioned Cornbugs because when I was being sniffed around for a part in Repo, Darren Bowsman asked me if I could sing. And I had already given him some Cornbugs CDs. And I said, well, yeah, Cornbugs. And he goes, yeah, well, can you sing? So that was funny, kind of, at the time. It's only funny because I got the job, but
And they kind of sing.
and because I was asked to audition a part of the movie, and I did. I came to the studio and followed one of the Pussycat Dolls, and I think I sang maybe Night Surgeon,
Legal assassin.
Legal Assassin. So.
Can you give us a sample?
No, I can't. But I did a good enough job, actually, because we were at a studio that was Yoshiki's studio in North Hollywood, and Yoshiki is like the Prince, like guy Prince, purple one, of Japan. And Yoshiki had this fabulous studio, and he had what I call the magic microphone. Because I was really worried about, oh my God, how am I going to sound? Because sometimes we sound better in the shower, and then we actually stand up in front of people, we sound kind of not as good. But this microphone was so magical, because as soon as I went, it just sounded deep and rich, buttery.
That sounded pretty good.
And so that encouraged me to, give it my all. I got the job. So that's the end of my story.
I'm still stuck on you making that noise and saying buttery afterwards. It's kind of hot. I'm sorry, everything
And
goes
the
to hell that I
Pussycat,
do.
Pussycat Doll did not get the job.
She did not.
I had a bit of serendipity in the sense that I just finished a tour and I met Joe Bishara, who was doing, who did work on the music for bands, and Darren Smith, and was instrumental, I guess very instrumental in the end when Yoshiki was no longer a part of the project per se. He was very instrumental in putting together all of the music, and we've been friends for a while. He had a band called Drowned back in the late 80s, early 90s, and I saw him after a show, and he asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, well, I'd love to be a monster in a movie, which has always been one of my things. And he said he's working on a movie called Repo, the Genetic Opera. There's one character that they were looking for, and his name was Pavi, and he was a face-stealing rapist. And of course, who wouldn't gravitate towards that? So I was thrilled, and my experiences of singing were a bit different than Bill's. In my audition, I'd met Darren and Terrence, and they were very gracious, and I'd never done an audition. It sounds odd as a singer, but I'd never gone in and done an actual audition. I learned to sing in one of the most perverse ways by basically gargling glass and doing everything wrong with my voice. So to go in, I sat down at the piano with them, I remember, in the studio, and they're like, what can you audition for us? I'm like, and they're like, well, do you know any standards? And I'm like, no. And so I didn't do very well at that part of the audition, and went back and did a reading, and came back and did the reading as Pavi, and that's what kind of sealed it for me. And I think originally Darren was looking for actors that could sing, and wasn't really looking for singers that could act per se. So I had a little bit of an uphill battle just in convincing people that I could act and sing at the same time. So I happened into it quite by chance, and was very lucky. And Terrence was obviously very supportive of getting into the role, because they had to again push the producers and the actual company Lionsgate for me as a character, coming from no real acting background. Everybody else has quite a resume, and so it was a bit of a push, because they were also looking for a different type of Pavi. Pavi was going from kind of a more heavier set gentleman, and they were looking at people like Newman from Friends, or from Seinfeld, I should say, originally. So it was
Jason Alexander?
not Jason, was it? It was the other, yeah, it was the other guy.
I didn't watch the show.
And so, well, yeah, and so it was a bit of a stretch for me. So I came in and did my reading. I had a really good reading, and it was very supported by everybody. Everybody laughed. I basically came in with a mirror with Paris Hilton's face on it. And I didn't know Paris was coming in that very date. I heard she was coming in for an audition, but I didn't know when. And so I had, my whole shtick was, at the end of my audition, I'd be to the director or whoever, I'd say, you want to know who Pavi is? You want to know who fucking Pavi is? I'll show you who Pavi is. And I showed the mirror with Paris's face. And before I was practicing my lines nervously, and I heard this triumphant fanfare coming out of the studio, the doors open, and Paris walks by me, and I have the mirror by my side, turned upwards, turned downwards, and she walks out to a fanfare of paparazzi and everything. I'm just like, oh God, what do I do now? And I went in and did it anyway, and it went off really good. So that's basically how I got the role. There was a lot of them caressing the film people to like get me in. So.
One of the really
Hand
cool
jobs.
Hand jobs all around.
Are we bringing that back from the other episode? To have the whole hand job on TV? Because
Bringing back buttery.
we're bringing back buttery and hand jobs. So if any of you guys have Pam at home, sweet. But
Stuck in my head.
yeah, I always make Bill think of hand jobs. I don't know how that happened exactly, but whatever. I'll go with it.
I'm a lefty.
Carefully. One of the coolest things about Repo is it kind of transcended its way from movie to phenomenon. Now, here's a movie, it got made, and there was a little bit of turmoil at first because Lionsgate didn't really realize what they had. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and who better to do it than you, other than Darren maybe, who was up on a cross for God knows how long.
Well, you know, when doing any artistic project, I think you, at least I as an artist, and I think most artists, you believe in yourself enough to do it. You know, you believe that somehow, I guess, your taste is going to appeal to somebody else. And sometimes you delude yourself into thinking that your taste may appeal to millions and millions of people. And I think with Repo, because it started so small, and it really was just a few struggling artists pushing this rock up the hill. When suddenly we were presented with Lionsgate is making the film, the likes of Paul Sorvino and Sarah Brightman and Bill Moseley are going to be in it. We were all like pretty much high-fiving each other and going, we've made it. Repo's going to be on every freaking billboard. You know, we're going to be an overnight success and all this. And some of that was delusional, but some of it was on set, for example. It always felt like a family. And everyone that sort of touched the project seemed to kind of fall in love with it. So we were sort of thinking that trend was going to continue. And then when the movie comes out, or I should say just before the movie came out, we had a test screening, which happens with a lot of films. They show a cut of the movie to an audience that's recruited, and they act as a jury, basically. And they say yay or nay. And they said nay. So from that moment on, Repo...
Wasn't it presented in a certain way when they were handing out the tickets to it, that they kind of...
Yeah, I mean, they misrepresented it. They said, you know, it's a new experiment in terror from the guys that thought you saw. But I think, though, in hindsight, now looking at it, I don't think anything they would have said would have made a difference. In the sense that Repo is its own special thing. And it took on this cult life, but it kind of always had that. It was just that moment where I think we kind of deluded ourselves into thinking it was something more mainstream. Because it started out as a traveling act. We were always kind of the misfits, the bastard kids. I look at the DVDs and CDs that I liked that are on my shelf. None of them were mainstream. So I think we made a film that really was honest about what we liked. And while it wasn't what the studio necessarily thought of as something that was an easy thing to market as a movie, the fact that it's out there and it's found an audience that has those same wacky movies on their shelves, I think it also happened the way it needed to. But yes, it was a struggle the entire way. Lionsgate wasn't even going to release it. So the director, Darren, and I just took it upon ourselves to tour it, to travel it, as though it was a concert. And while that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't met the struggle from Lionsgate, at the same time, it really was a natural progression from the way Repo always was, which was a live touring act with a bunch of carnies at the helm. And in a roundabout way, I hope that answers your